Hey there, Jackie Haley with Dream to Author. I am excited to introduce you to Trinity Fuentes. She's with Form and Function Editorial. She is a professional editor, helping authors get their manuscript into that final format, polished, ready to go so they can submit with confidence to those publishers and literary agents and have a successful process. Trinity, thank you for joining me. I just have a couple quick questions that I think would be a great benefit for our listeners and viewers out there to know about. Tell us a little bit about the benefits of working with an editor, particularly copy editor.
Thank you, Jackie. Working with a copy editor is very important because it's not just catching grammatical inconsistencies or spelling errors. It's also conforming your manuscript to a style. And in the publishing industry, the standard is the Chicago Manual of Style. And so the copy editor will often, have that online version up on the screen along with your manuscript, and they are looking at every single word, and they're checking things like capitalization to make sure that that is consistent throughout the book and it conforms to the Chicago standards. They're looking at the way numbers are stylized. For instance, spelling out numbers 1 through 99, and then going ahead and using the numerals after that. They're looking at whether words are italicized, how quotations are handled. And so there are a lot of details that need to be considered in your book to make it professional. And it also provides a continuous experience for the reader so that they're not jarred from the story or the narrative by inconsistencies. And that is different from grammar. This is a style, and copy editors are well versed. There are a lot of things to know, and they will look everything up because there's just no way you can know all of it. And lay people just wouldn't know these things. So if you're an indie publisher, I would highly recommend working with a copy editor who can get your book to a really professional level so that it shines.
And not only that, even source lists for the nonfiction writers that need to list out their sources and things like that. Exactly. Chicago Style has that particular way of doing that, which is a huge help as well. So I highly recommend looking into that, checking out editors that will be able to help you make sure you get that in a consistent format, polished and ready to go. Trinity, tell me a little bit about like the most common mistakes that you see in your clients' work, just especially first-time authors. What do they run into mostly?
Yeah, I think some of the issues are kind of shifting between tense, and also passive voice versus active voice. And that can be really difficult to see in your own writing. But once somebody points it out and shows some examples of how you can really display a character's agency, and it really comes alive for the reader because it's not something happening to them, it's them performing the action. Another really common one is showing versus telling. And so in the industry, there's a term called info dumping. And especially with first-time authors, but even authors who've been at it a long time, it's really hard to weave in some backstory, and it's really tempting to just have paragraphs and paragraphs of what came before. And an editor can help you find ways to weave that naturally into the story that sort of mimic the way we think and the way we talk amongst ourselves. We don't always live in the present tense. We're kind of dipping into the past. We're dipping into the future. And that makes it a little more believable and easier to follow. And it doesn't bore the reader. It can really bog them down.
That can happen through the narrators. And just for an example, for those first-time writers out there, the info dump generally happens when the narrator is giving the information to the reader rather than having it intertwined, like Trinity is talking about, within dialogue or from a memory of the character or from just the character's perspective, how they see something, and they can slip in those details that are helpful to the story that move that forward, like Trinity is saying. And I don't mean to take over your take your
No,
thunder
no,
there, but
that's
just want to give a few
perfect.
examples of that show don't tell.
That's really well put. And it also, it really affects the pace of the story. It can, because if there's an info dump, it can just throttle it down. And then the reader gets a little bit mired in the details, trying to keep track of things rather than just wanting to move forward and turn the page because they're excited, to see what happens next rather than like, oh, I'm just a little bit tired of these prose.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another thing that I notice is a challenge with point of view. So, if you're writing in third person and you've chosen that this is going to be your main character, and we're mainly going to be seeing the story from their perspective, but then somebody else in the scene starts reflecting and you get into their head, this is called head hopping. So it's okay to have multiple points of view within a book, but it's really advisable to stay in one point of view for a chapter or at least for the whole scene, and then maybe have a break. And, a break is a really nice cue for a reader that, okay, we're going to have a shift, and then you need to locate them. So these are all things a developmental editor can help you with. I went to a writing group myself this week, and I had a sample of writing, and I proudly shared it. And somebody said, "Oh, why are we in the guard's head? Are they coming back?" And I was like, "No, they're not." "Oh my gosh, I'm head hopping." So even editors
It's
can do
easy
this.
to
It's
do.
hard to see on your own.
Yes, absolutely. And when we are looking at our own stuff, we're too close to the project. So it always is good to have that extra set of eyes, and especially professional set of eyes that knows what to look for and how to have that Chicago style embedded in your story, how to make sure your tense is correct, your sentences are active rather than passive. A passive sentence will be like, to the store I go, rather than I am going to the store or I went to the store. Those are things that a lot of people do more than not that you see.
Yeah.
And but once you find them, you're going to be able to fix those and make it inactive, and that'll be a much better read for the reader uh, to experience and get through that story much faster. So thank you so much, Trinity, for bringing this to light. And if there is anything that they have questions about on editing services, how do they get in touch with you?
You can visit my website, formfunctioneditorial.com, or you can reach me at Trinity at formfunctioneditorial.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much and keep writing, everybody.